General, Your Excellency Swami, distinguished members of many different countries, military, colleagues and friends, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. But I want to speak today in large part to those that are the most junior in the ranks. Because as the General will attest and as others who are with me will attest, your day will come and you will retire. And then you will wear a suit and you will travel the world and you'll give speeches about things that perhaps you know and perhaps you don't know. But at the end of the day, it will be you. And it will be you that carries on this great and noble charter. I want to remind you of something that I think you probably know. And that is that this morning, through lots of little devices like this, we watched a machine sent from the globe, our Earth, to Mars. Now, you know where Mars is. It's a long ways away. It was sent all the way up there, and in a myriad of military operations, or seemingly like military operations, it figured out how to get down to Mars. Then it figured out how to communicate back to us. And then it said, what rock do you want me to pick up? And it picked up a little rock. And it shot a little laser beam at it to say what was inside that rock. Now, the fact that I could see that from halfway around the globe from where I live on a wireless device all the way out in Mars says something about who we are as a human group, who we are as a people. And as war fighters, it is our job not just to read the words peace and stability, but to believe those words so much that we are willing to create the stability in our society that will allow our society to contribute to the globe, to do those same and marvelous things. So today when I'm talking to you, I come from you, as the General said, from different perspectives. Business, yes. Military, of course. But I also come to you as a guy that's just retired, that has a big family, lives on a ranch, watches all of my 8 grandchildren run around, most of them doing things they shouldn't be doing. And I applaud them because it's peaceful, it's stable, and when they go to school, I count on them to do things. So my story to you today is not just about what it is that the UN says are best practices, because the most remarkable thing about this trip has been that you already know them. The second most remarkable thing about this, as we have said amongst ourselves over here, is nobody else knows that. Can you imagine that I have traveled the globe talking about rehabilitation, about the very techniques that are used, some that we thought we pioneered. And then I come to a presentation, General, and you have them all listed out. I'm going to show you what the UN says. You're already doing them, maybe a few things. So amongst the couple messages that I have for you today is you owe it to the rest of the globe to be less silent, to be more communicative, to have a broader reach, and to adopt what those of us who have been through this war-fighting piece. And mind you, I served in Vietnam. That's how far back I go. Who have seen what can happen when terrorists are allowed to kill civilians for marquee value in order to achieve their political goals. That is not acceptable. That asymmetrical tactic is understood, no question. It's been around forever. But it is a tactic called terrorism that kills civilians for marquee value in order to be able to prove a political goal. There has to be a better way. And I think, General, what Sri Lanka has done is demonstrated that better way. But I think it's not enough. You have to speak to more than just the military. In many ways, you're singing to the audience that loves you and respects you and has the greatest regard for what you've done. But now you have to reach out, and I'll show you some lessons that I learned in this process. There isn't anybody in this room who doesn't recall how the United States got into the activity in Iraq. But you will not know that I was selected by General Petraeus to come in and take over after this activity, at a time when we were going to go to 48,000 detainees. My biggest challenge was exactly what is victory? I mean, I'm like you, a military guy. Well, hey, boss, what does it mean to win? Do you know, with all due respect for some of the best leadership that I've seen, nobody could tell me. They couldn't tell me what winning meant, not at least in my realm. So what I said was, down at the bottom, I'm going to just influence the society positively. So I came up with a plan. My plan was take counterinsurgency and go deal with it in my turf, in the area that I had, which was detention and all of interrogation. So I interrogated probably 30-some thousand interrogations over probably an aggregate number of nearly 40,000 detainees. And what I said was, we're going to do more than just take care of them, more than just care in custody. We're going to do our part. We're going to replace the destructive ideology that existed out there. We're going to find a way to release these people and get them back into society. And then we're going to do something that was tremendously opposed to at the time. We're going to release them and hope that they go back and help us. Through this entire process, as Dr. Ari will tell you, I tried to measure, and I have hundreds of slides of things that I measured about detainees, who they were, their family, their psychological assessment, and the list goes on. Because the original process that I inherited was just as simple. We grabbed them, we took the records, we threw them in a detention camp. And then when the detention camp got too big, we released them. Not very scientific, not very effective, because they went back to the fight. What later happened after a year plus of work is this. We engaged up front with a very detailed assessment. Why are you fighting? And it won't come as a surprise to you that the vast majority of them didn't even want to be fighting. It isn't why they wanted to be there. But 5% of them, they knew exactly what they were doing and why they were there. And we were able, through a process, to weed out who they were and at the same time exchange those thoughts and put them back. Because you know what our job is in the military as it relates to this tactic? And I'm going to simplify it down to one word: recruiting. Our job is to stop the recruiting. If the enemy cannot recruit, the enemy cannot fight. So central to the central thesis of what we do is to try to eliminate the recruiting. If you don't eliminate the recruiting, and if you put them all together, and even if you protect them in prison camps or detention centers, they will still intimidate. They will still take charge, and they will still train. So if you don't do this, they'll recruit even when you say, I've got them. They're off the battlefield. Because in the field of ideology, they're not off the battlefield. You gave them the perfect battlefield. You surrounded them with a whole bunch of people, all of whom are waiting to be told what to do, as Dr. Ari told you earlier. So when you change the process, you change the outcome, and you begin to stop the recruiting, push back the influence that takes place, start a rehabilitation effort, and by the way, release, 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 so that they go back into society and help. And that's what's so remarkable about your 36-month effort, is that you went from a big number down to a small number, and you're still holding some. Let me tell you, and this is just a comment, in all the programs I've seen, some of the best that are going on, the Saudis, Singapore, I can list yours and probably Malaysia, I would think, wouldn't you? Are the best in the globe. There are some that are the worst in the globe, and some that are completely dead. They tried, they failed. They're actually doing the opposite. They're doing like we did in American detention in the early part of the war, creating the problem, not ending the problem. But what we know about this is that if you employ these techniques, you will stop the recruiting. In fact, these are the numbers, just some of the hundreds and hundreds that I have, that can show you from the disturbances, the killings, a whole list of issues, bad behaviors, that dropped as the program started, from the very first part of the surge to the end. This perhaps is the most important chart It shows you at each program where we began to see them returning less. Until this time, from early on, they were returning, coming right back into the fight, but then began to drop off. I agree with Ari on a very important point. This was important at the moment. It doesn't mean anything today. We don't know what it means today because, frankly, we haven't been given the opportunity to go test it out. But the reality is, at the moment, it worked. In fact, it worked in great, monumental ways. I was able to tell the parents of the people down in the bottom right, the soldiers who were killed in combat, and return their bodies, their bones to them. Al-Qaeda gave me that information. They were able to give me the sources of tremendous weaponry, the sources of ideology, and intelligence that was invaluable. It stopped and ended the surge in our time, and that happened from inside a rehabilitation effort inside detention. And during the period of time we were there, not 1%, not the 18 that used to be, not 1% returned to that fight. But here's the extent, and this is in part my first statement to you about why you must reach out. For us to be effective, we had to be able to